Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Oswego Dynasty. This week is our bye week, so we will be quickly going over the recruiting and then touching on, as it is week 9, what the rest of the NCAA is doing in terms of promotion and relegation, and looking at a quick glance at that coming up. So what we're going to talk about with this team here is that we got Jason Moss. Now, this is what he's looking like. He's got some run blocking skills and some acceleration. I know it doesn't look great, but believe it or not, a 57 overall center is better than what we have already. And then an update on Calvin Wyatt, our speedy fullback. It would be really nice to be able to grab him. We are climbing right now, but it is going to be a tight battle. You might think about throwing in the recruiting visit. The hard part about the recruiting visit is that with our budget, with our house rules, it would cost us 2 recruiting points to be able to pull that off. So the desire to do that is a little bit lower. So now we're going to talk about a little bit more about this cornerback room that we are looking at. So one of our bigger struggles that we have on our team right now is I don't trust our secondary at all. And a lot of that is because we just don't have any corners that can actually really cover really well. So looking at these guys here that we have, the hard part I run into here is that I would like to be able to have a couple freshmen in this, but there's just not enough guys out there that make an immediate impact. Richard Newsom is the only freshman we have, and his overall is really low. We're gonna pick him up, but that's one of the bigger things that I run into a challenge here. So looking at this, we're really looking at grabbing guys that are just well balanced overall, really focusing more on that man coverage. And then obviously speed's important, but at corner you're going to have lots of speedy guys. So looking at more man coverage and play recognition as the guys that we are really looking at. All of them suck at tackling, so I'm not worried about that. And looking a little bit at pursuit, but really looking at man and play rec. So that's really putting us into Antoine Harris as one of the guys that's one of our bigger gets that we can have. He's got the acceleration. He's got just as good press as all the other corners that we have. He's got good man, good zone, and the good play recognition. So really looking at him. And one of the guys that is not living up to par is this James Sims guy. And with him being from Ohio, it's really just not worth it for us to be able to continue to recruit him, because he is not any better than any of the corners that we are already recruiting. And we're just in a battle, and it's not worth putting in the extra time and the effort. So that should help our budget out a lot by dropping him. But the big guys we're really wanting are Antoine Harris and Sylvester Johnson, and then Peterson as well. David Peterson. Those are the guys that we're really looking to want to grab in this recruiting time with our corners, because that's one thing that we really need to improve on is our secondary. So being able to drop a couple guys is very helpful. We were able to drop a 1.2 on our recruiting budget, which gets us closer to being within budget, but still a problem that we are going to be running into. So now we are to where a lot of you will probably enjoy the most, is looking at these conference standings and seeing how things are looking. Pac-12 looking like BYU is not in a great spot. Oregon State also not looking too good. And we're looking at Farmington. They're 1-5 in conference, which isn't the greatest thing, but they do have that protection going into this next year, so it should help them just a little bit. They've been able to compete, they just aren't winning the close ones. And then looking at the top, USC and Oregon are the teams definitely to beat right now. Second Haven is putting in a push to fight for Oregon, and UCLA and Washington, they're all looking like they can challenge USC, but USC is off to a fantastic start, and it's looking like it might just be USC versus Oregon. It might be them again going into the conference championship week. So now looking at the SEC, Alabama is off to a huge, fantastic start. That is good news for them. They have dominated the NCAA altogether, and they're continuing to do that in a even stronger SEC than they have in real life. One of the bigger surprises in this conference is Tennessee. They are a very good team. Their overalls are very good, and it is incredibly surprising to see them down at the bottom at 1-6. They do have the potential of going down, which is really incredible because they were projected to finish first in their division and to play Alabama at the preseason. And here they are trying to fight off relegation with UCF, and Louisville. So now looking at the Sun Belt, a Tier 3 conference. This Sun Belt Conference has not necessarily played a lot of conference games so far, so it is really difficult to really know who is going to be the team that is going to be going up. But one thing for sure is that Virginia is not going to be a team that will be going up, because as they were relegated last year into Tier 3. So they are having a fantastic start to their season so far. And it's always good to be able to continue winning, even if you're not eligible for promotion. It's always nice to be able to have a conference championship under your belt if you can get it. But not a lot of games have been played in this Tier 3 Sun Belt Conference, so it's really difficult to know how that conference is going to shape out. So now looking at the ACC. So now, again, this conference hasn't played as many conference games, so it is up in the air. But West Virginia and Cincinnati are not looking too hot right now. Purdue, they haven't had a great season so far, and they weren't really expected to have a great season. They were still slated to finish near the bottom of the conference. They've been able to compete. They have definitely received a wake-up call to what Tier 1 football really is. Hopefully they're able to find some recruiting as they continue on. Notre Dame is going to try and make a push on Ohio State, so we will see what is going to happen in that one. So now looking at the American Conference, the Tier 2 conference that feeds into the SEC and the Sun Belt. This is something that is really fun for me to look at, is this NC State team and UAB. These are both relegation and promotion teams. NC State were relegated from Tier 1, so they're not going to be eligible to move up into Tier 1, but that they don't care about that, as they are 7th in the country right now, being 6-0 and 4-0 in conference. And one of the other things that's really exciting about this conference is UAB. They're a team that was promoted last year from the Sun Belt, and it was a close battle for them with a bunch of other teams from their division, and they ended up winning their division and then winning their conference. And now look at them. They're 5-1 in conference already. They only have 3 games left to play, and their last game of the year is going to be NC State. So that is one that I am actually incredibly excited about in this upcoming season, is what is going to happen in the American. Because even then, Wake Forest also only has 1 loss on the year, and they were slated to finish near the bottom of the conference for them as well. So this is just a fun conference for me to keep an eye on, and I'm really excited to see how this battle is going to shape out with NC State, UAB, and Wake Forest. So now looking at the Big 12, the team that is not looking too hot right now is SMU. They are in big time trouble, being the only team to not have won a game in their conference. Now, a lot of these other teams near the bottom haven't played a lot of conference games, but they are much better teams than SMU is. And then looking at who is fighting for those top spots in their division, The Central has a lot of up in the air, a lot of teams that haven't played a lot of games, and a lot of stuff that could really happen. There's some really good teams in there with Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, and Texas. So it's going to be really interesting to see. SMU, very dangerous spot because those are a lot of really good teams, and they've only played one team in their division. So the rest of their conference games are going to be within division. So SMU is in some definitely big time trouble. Arkansas and Oklahoma really do seem to be the teams that are fighting for that top spot in the division to play for the conference championship game. It looks like Oklahoma's going to be up there again, but Arkansas definitely trying to make a push. We'll have to see what happens with Oklahoma on that one. So now looking at the Big Ten, this conference was wide open last year, which is super fun to watch. From last year, where they had 6 teams that all had an opportunity to be promoted into the Big 12. That's really fun to watch. And again, it's looking like there could be some pretty good battles going on this year as well. So earlier on, we saw that Nebraska was doing really well, and now they've kind of cooled off just a little bit. 2 losses on the year, but going off of last year, 2 losses is not a bad loss column in conference in this Big Ten. It is definitely one of the better conferences in the country, maybe even top 5. So it's a stacked conference where everybody is incredibly good. The teams there down at the bottom, Iowa and Minnesota, they're not looking too hot. Their offenses have not played well at all season, and they're definitely going to be the teams to watch for relegation opportunity with depending on what happens in the Conference USA. And speaking of the Conference USA, here is that Conference USA. So we're looking at this Central Division here, and they haven't played a lot of games, so it's really, like I've said in the past, it's really difficult to see what's going to be happening in this division because there's a lot of up in the air stuff that could happen. And a lot of the teams here are really close together in overall rating and can be right up there with anybody else. It's anybody's game at this point for the Central Division. But looking at the West Division, Air Force is off to a fantastic start to their season. Unfortunately for them, they are ineligible for the promotion spot after their devastating collapse last year that sent them down to Tier 3. But they've definitely showed that they want that back, and they are playing fantastic right now. It might just be theirs for the taking. So now looking at the independents, Colorado State is off to a fantastic start to this season, having played their 8 games so far. They are currently in the lead in terms of the independents points to receive that promotion spot for the independents right now, being in the West region. So they're looking very promising. A couple other teams that are also looking a little bit more promising are Southern Mississippi. They're also up there with the promotion. They've played some really good teams so far in the year, so their record is a little bit understated because they have played lots of really good teams and they've beaten a lot of good teams. Their three of their wins have been up against Tier 2 caliber schools, so that's a really big win for them. And they've really only played good teams. They haven't really played any bad teams, so their loss record is a little high for how good they are, but they've definitely won some really good games that are keeping them up there. And one last team I wanted to talk about with this is Billows Falls. They're definitely not right now in this moment in contention for being promoted. They've played really bad teams so far in the year. They've only really played Tier 4 or FCS schools. That's where most of their wins have come from. Basically all of their wins have come from those lower tier schools, and they've also lost a lot of games to those. Their 2 losses have been also to really bad teams. So their record is a little bit inflated right now, being at 4-2. So they definitely are not a team that's looking like they're going to fight for promotion, right now, even though their record is looking pretty good. And then wanted to talk about the MAC right now. This one is still up in the air. The only team that's really played a lot of conference games is Northwestern, and they're the team that's been relegated from Tier 1 so far in this conference, and they have not played well. They haven't played well at all. I don't see them being a team that's being in that relegation contention, but to be a team that comes from Tier 1 and going 3-4 in the MAC, the worst conference of the Tier 2s that are out there. And technically, the Conference USA has a better conference rating than the MAC right now. It's not a good sight for Northwestern, especially since they've got a couple All-Americans on their team. They should be performing a little bit better. But looking at the promotion and the relegation, tough to tell right now. Marshall, again, still down at the bottom. Not necessarily where they want to be, but they've played really good offense. So I could see them really moving forward. But a lot of the games have not been played so far. So we will have to wait and see what the MAC is going to look like. And now looking at the Mountain West Conference. So not a lot of conference games so far. A lot of the conference games have been played in week 6 and week 7. So only a couple conference games have been played so far. But this is a stacked top of the conference. Washington State's ranked. Alaska is ranked. Kansas is close to being ranked. If they win one of their games instead of going 3-2, they'd be up there in the rankings. And Boise State was receiving votes. They were 5-2, but now that conference play has started, they've kind of cooled off just a little bit. Washington State and Alaska are really looking like the front runners right now for this conference. Alaska was definitely a team that was slated to be finishing up near the top, and they've got the offense to really do it. So it will be interesting to see what happens when Alaska and Washington State start playing a couple of the better teams in the conference and seeing how well they can play. But these two teams are definitely teams that can compete for that promotion spot. It'll be interesting to tell. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. If you've made it this far in this video, like and subscribe to the channel if you would like, and we will see you next week as we will try and win our first game of the year against Louisiana Monroe.